Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video we will be discussing Nessus vulnerability scan analysis. This is because lots of my subscribers are asking for it. I will demonstrate how the scan analysis is conducted using Excel spreadsheets. Before we begin, please consider subscribing to the channel to help grow the channel, and also do smash the like button and the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload new videos. Thank you, and let's get started. Alright, so now let's go over the tasks to be completed whenever you're doing your vulnerability scan analysis. So first of all, you have to locate the scan results repository, that is the SharePoint or wherever the SOC operating center analyst or the SOC analyst, wherever they upload the scan results, whenever they scan your system. After you locate that, you have to make sure you have access to that location. Now you have to download a copy of the raw scan to be analyzed to your local machine. Then you start the analysis to remove unwanted information on the scan result, and also you have to sort based on the criticality of the vulnerability. Analyze based on the unique vulnerability, that is the plugin ID, even if it affects multiple assets, and you see what I mean by this when we start the hands-on. Send the analyzed scan results to the system admins, notifying them of the identified vulnerabilities. If any vulnerability cannot be remediated within the organization time frame for fixing vulnerabilities, typically it's about 30 days. If the system admins come to you as a security analyst or the ISO and then inform you that, hey, this vulnerability cannot be fixed within the allotted time of 30 days, so we might need a bit more time, then a poem will be created to track this. But if they can fix it within the 30 days, typically you are not required to create a poem for this. Alright, so now I'm going to navigate to my file manager and then into the download folder. I'm going to assume that I just downloaded my vulnerability scan results, the raw scan, into my download folder. So open it up. Alright, so now before we move on, I just want to point out something here. So you see that I have a folder here. So before you start your scan analysis, you have to save a copy of the raw scan you just downloaded on your local machine, just in case something happens down the line and then somebody is referring you back to the scan results that you analyzed, say 3, 4, 5 months ago, right? You don't want to be going back to the SharePoint trying to locate all these files. So for my best practice, what I typically do is that once I download it from the scan repository, I save a raw scan copy for myself based on the month. Alright, and then I'll save another copy that I'm going to analyze. So I'm going to have 2 scans for the month. One is the raw scan, and the other one is just the analyzed scan for that particular month. So let me go into this folder to see exactly how I set up the folder. So when I open up this folder, you see that I have the analyzed scan and the raw scan. So in the raw scan, you notice that I have, say, for example, January 2022, February 2022, all the way to December 2022. So in each of this folder, I'm going to put the raw scan for each month. So once I download it, I'm going to save a copy to, for instance, we're in January, right? I'm going to save a copy to the January folder, right? Likewise, I'll save a copy in the analyzed folder under January, and this is what I'm going to use for my analysis. So at every given month, I have 2 copies of the scan, one raw scan and the other one is the analyzed scan based on the month. So as I go, and if something happens down the line and then they ask me for the scan analysis for a particular month, in the past, I can always go back to my local folder and I can give them without going back to any repository looking around to see where I download or where I store my scans and stuff like that. So it's a good practice. This is not required. This is something that works for me, and I thought I'd share it with the subscribers. I'm going to go ahead and save a copy into my raw scan folder. Save as, browse to the location is going to be my desktop. Go to vulnerability scan, save it in the raw scan. I look for January. Then I can modify this to put a date, so that's going to be 1/28/2022. Save this to Excel workbook, and I save. Alright, so now I have a saved copy of the raw scan in my raw scan, and then the one I'm going to use for my scan analysis, I'm going to save it in the analyze scan, and then I can work on that. So this is going to be here. I'm going to go to analyze scan, save Excel workbook. So this is going to be in the analyze scan, and then I'll locate January. Alright, and then I can save this. So this is going to be the copy that I'm going to use to do the scan analysis. Alright, so now first of all, you see the scan has the plugin ID, the CVE, the CVSS call, the RIX, the host protocol, port name, synopsis, description, solution, further references for the system admins if they want to read further on that vulnerability, they can, and then the plugin output, right? So in order for me to have this vulnerability scan results, what I did was that I set up a VM or virtual machines on my lab, so that I can have machines to run the scans again, so I can generate a result for the video. So what I did was that I looked for machines that are vulnerable out there, so I can have a lot of vulnerabilities in the vulnerability scan result for me to do the demo. So you see I have the Metasploitable 2, which is a highly vulnerable Linux machine. I have the Windows XP. Everybody knows that Microsoft does not support Windows XP anymore, so that has a lot of vulnerability. And then also I have Windows 7 machine. They are all virtual machines actually that I downloaded on my lab. Also have Kali Linux, where I installed the Nessus vulnerability scan to run the scan, so I can generate the result. I have my server. This is what the Active Directory, the domain controller. I have the CentOS. I have some of these machines are highly vulnerable because I didn't patch them in a while. So CentOS, Ubuntu, Windows 10. This is how I set up the virtual machines to run the scan so I can generate the report. This is the scan result. This is the Nessus vulnerability scan, the Home Essential. This is free actually. You can scan up to 16 IP addresses. So this is the scan that I run, and these are all the vulnerabilities that were identified on the host. So I have all of these IP addresses representing my virtual machines that I just showed you guys. So you see they have a lot of vulnerabilities on these things because a lot of them have not been patched in a while. Alright, so we have the critical, high, medium, low, and then informational vulnerabilities here. So what I did was that I just exported the results in CSV file. Just click on the general report, and that was the results that you saw. Alright, so let's move on to the analysis part. So moving on, now we're going to reduce some of this information that will not be needed in our analysis. So for example, this one here, the CVSS core, might not be, will not need it in this analysis, but again, it depends on the organization or the agency that you work with. If they want to see the CVSS core on your finalized scan analysis, keep it in there. But for the most part, a lot of organizations that I've seen, they don't require that in your analysis. So I can go ahead and delete this. Definitely we need the host. That's going to be the IP address, right? So here that is needed. That's going to be the IP address. We can modify this into IP address, or we can just add host IP address. The protocol, we don't need this since we're gonna leave the port, but we don't need the protocol, so we're gonna go ahead and delete the protocol. Alright, but the name is something that we need. Whatever name is the problem, we need that. And the synopsis is actually what the problem or what the vulnerability is, and then the description gives you a full description or a detailed description of what the vulnerability is. So we're going to leave that, and then of course the solution, right, gives you, well, whatever remediation activity you need to perform on the scan, on the asset to remediate the vulnerability. And also the plugin ID. So the plugin ID will give detail, as to how the system admins, this will help the system admin. Sometimes the solution will be a bit generalized, but the plugin output will show them exactly what needs to perform and how the remediation process should go. So now we're just gonna highlight this whole thing here. Okay, and then we're gonna go to where it says format as a table. And then we're going to choose this one here, and then I'm going to make sure my table has headers. It's checked, and I click on OK. So this is going to format it in a table for us, just so our scan and analysis will look cleaner and nice. So now the next step is, see, under the risk we have something they call the none, which is informational, right? So this is not actually a vulnerability because it has no risk factor assigned to it. If it is a none, all that this is saying is that it's giving you information that, okay, you need to pay attention to this stuff, but then again, it's not a vulnerability. So it means we do not need it here in our scan because it's not actually a vulnerability. So we're going to filter that and then delete that off our finalized scan analysis. So we're going to filter on the none, and this is all the none, which is informational. So what we're going to do is that we're going to highlight everything, and then we're going to delete this whole thing here. We're going to click on right click and then delete row. So everything is gone. So now we're going to release our filter. You can see that we don't have the none listed anymore. We're going to release our filter, and then we see that we have just risks based on the criticality, which is critical, high, medium, and low. But the row height has kind of distorted. So we're going to go back into format, and then we go to row height, and then we're going to put it back to the default, which is 15. Alright, so now after we've done that, we realize that under the risk column it is not really organized. We have medium, high, medium, low, critical. It is not really organized. What we want to see here is we want to see all the critical vulnerabilities first, followed by the high vulnerability, followed by the medium, and so on. But this whole thing is not really organized, so we want to be able to sort it so that it looks nicer. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go to sort and filter, and then we select custom sort. So under the custom sort, we're going to sort by what column do you want to sort it by, and this is what the risk column. So we're going to select risk, right? And then the order that you want, we don't want it A to Z or Z to A. We want to set a custom sort, and then under this custom sort, this is what we're gonna put here. We want to sort it based on critical, high, medium, and low. This is what we want to sort it based on. So once you hit on add, you see that your custom sort will be added to the list, and then you can click on, make sure it's highlighted, and then you click on OK, and then you click on OK. So you notice that this whole risk column has been organized for you based on your sort criteria. You have all the critical listed first, and then we have followed by the high, and then the medium, and so on. So it makes the whole thing nice. So anybody looking at this will see all the critical vulnerabilities first, followed by the high vulnerabilities and the medium and the low. So now what we're going to do now is we're going to sort on we're going to filter based on the criticality, or based on the risk factor. So we're going to select the critical first. Alright, so what we want to pay attention to here is that when you highlight this, you notice that we have what? We have 21 count of this vulnerabilities, 21 count listed below here, right? Alright, so, and then when we filter on the high vulnerability, let's see how many high vulnerability, this is saying that this has. This has what, 38. You can see it here, 38 listed as high vulnerabilities. Alright, so now let's filter on the medium. and then this one too as well, 45 count. We have 45 count of this. All right, what about the low? How many of the lows? We're going to filter on the low. We have 8 count of the low. All right, now we're going to go back to our critical vulnerability. That's where we're going to start first. But the reason why we're looking at the count is that to make sure that when we do our final analysis, we're going to compare the count and see how the number of rows or the number has been decreased, because that tells you that if you don't do the scan analysis, you end up having a lot of rows that are duplicate or unnecessary, you know, sending your system admins a whole lot of information that you could have just condensed it to make it look more manageable, right? So to start the scan analysis, we're going to filter. We filtered it on the critical already. So now we're going to filter based on the plugin. We're going to take the plugin one at a time, and we look at the vulnerabilities and the affected asset. So when we choose the first plugin, you notice that this plugin or this vulnerability, this critical vulnerability or critical plugin is affecting just one host, right? One IP address, which is fine. So we move forward. We go to the next plugin. You notice that here it has the same plugin, and then also under the plugin, these are the same plugin, and it affecting the same host 3 times, right? So why do we have 3 times if it's the same IP address? Now we have to look at what is the CVE changing here. Yes, the CVE is changing because when you look at the port, it's affecting the same port 2049, right? So the only thing that is changing here is the CVE, but it's the same plugin ID. So how do you analyze this to make it look more manageable, you know, to condense the information here? So you notice that these are the only thing that you need to copy here. You need to copy this CVE and then add it to the first one, to the first row. Copy the last CVE and add it to the first row as well, right? So you see that the first row has all the 3 CVEs, and then, you know, the same asset or IP address. So we don't need these 2 extra lines. You just go ahead and then delete this row, right? So now when you look at it, it's just a 1 IP address, 1 plugin, which is a high critical vulnerability. But the only thing that is changing is it is what, 3 different CVEs, but the asset and the plugins are just 1. All right, moving on. Now we're going to go to the next plugin ID. This is 1.1, so we're good here. We're going to go to the next plugin ID. This is 2, right? And also affecting the same IP address or the same host. When you look at the CVE is the same, it's not changing. So what is changing here is the port. This is affecting, the first one is on port 25, and then the second one is on port 5432. But when you look at the vulnerability, they're all the same. Debian, open SSH, open SSL package, random number generator weakness. So it's a weakness. And then the solution, the synopsis here, the remote SSL certificate uses a weak key. And how do you fix that? It says consider all cryptographic material generated on the remote host to be what this is what is considered, that this is what guessable. So in particular, all SSH, SSL, and Open VPN keys should be regenerated. We have to regenerate another key. This is how you solve it. So the only thing that we're going to fix here is we're going to copy this port, and then we're going to update this port here. Control V. All right. So we're done here. We're going to delete this extra row. We've condensed the vulnerability. All right, we don't need this anymore. So you see this port has listed this column for the port has the 2 ports affected listed, and it's just on the same plugin and then the same asset. All right, moving on. I'm hoping you're getting the gist right now. So moving on, we have this is one-on-one, so no worries here. Go to the next plugin, one-on-one, no worries here as well. One-on-one. 1 and 1. All right, so now here we have a different one here that has what, the same plugin IP, the same plugin ID, and then it is on 2 different assets, right? So what we're going to do is that we're just going to copy this asset IP address and then add it to the first one, and we should be good to go. So we can delete this extra row. So what this is saying is that we have a critical vulnerability with this plugin ID affecting 2 of the assets within our organization. So it means that when you're reporting this, you're reporting that we have a critical vulnerability affecting 2 machines. So you're not going to say we have 2 critical vulnerabilities of the same plugin ID. That is not reporting it accurately. All right, moving on. So we have this this plugin ID affecting 4 different IPs, right? But everything else is the same. So what we're going to do is that we're going to copy this, then we can move fast here. I believe everybody gets the gist. Everybody is getting the flow right now. We copy this, we're going to add it here. Then we copy the last one. Alright, so we can go ahead and delete this. Alright, and then likewise here we have, the only thing that is different here is the CVE. Copy the CVE, and we can update it here. We delete this. Alright, so we're done with this. This is the last plugin. We can remove the filter on here, and then we can select the next risk, which is high, and we go through the same process again. I'm not going to go through the whole process. I'm going to pause this video so the video will not be long, but it's the same thing. Once you filter on the risk, you're going to go back to the plugin ID, and then you start filtering based on the individual plugin number, and then you do the same thing over and over again until you go to the last plugin ID, and then you go back and then you select the next risk factor, and then you do it over and over again. All right, so now the last one that I'm doing here is this plugin ID here. Like you can see, it's for the low risk, and that's the last plugin ID I'm doing. So the only thing that differs here is the IP address. So again, just copy this and then update this with this one here, and then you're good to go. So now we have this plugin affecting 2 assets, and that's how you report the vulnerability. And then you can go ahead and delete this extra row here. All right, so this is the end of it here. We're done with the analysis. We're going to release this filter, and then we're going to go back to our critical here, so we can compare the numbers that we had in the beginning. So when you highlight on the critical, you see that the number we have here is now 13, right? We have 13 count. So compare that with the 21 that we started on with. So we have 21 rows initially before the analysis, but now we have only 13. So that means that we are able to reduce the number of rows, combining, the things that are different, especially with the IP address. One plugin is a vulnerability that could affect multiple IPs. That does not mean you should list that same plugin over and over again because they are affecting multiple IPs. No, it's one unique vulnerability, but it's affecting multiple IPs, or one unique vulnerability has multiple CVE, or one unique vulnerability has multiple ports that are affected on. So that's how you kind of do the analysis and compress the whole information to make it more manageable and more readable by the system admin. So when they're working on, say, this plugin ID, they'll look at what assets are affected by this plugin ID, and then they can fix it right away. If they're working on this plugin, they look at what assets are affected by this. If they're working on this plugin, what assets are affected? This plugin, what assets are affected? So you see, you get the drift, right? So instead of having multiple assets listed and then, you know, expanding the vulnerability, you want to be able to report one unique vulnerability affecting whatever number of assets. All right, so now let's look at the high vulnerabilities that we have now. Now we have what, 11 counts, but when we started we had 38 counts of the high vulnerabilities. So you see how we are able to reduce this number from 38 to 11, right? Let's check the medium vulnerability and see the count. What is the count on the medium vulnerability after the analysis? We had 21. This is the count. And then, you know, we started off with 45 medium vulnerabilities, and then we are able to reduce it to 21 count. Right. All right. So this is how you do the analysis. We can release our filter here, and then we have a full-blown result, analyzed result. All right. So now this will be the final version of the scan analysis report that you will send to the system admins or the engineers to update, patch, or remediate these vulnerabilities. All right. So everything now is looking clean. You don't have duplicate plugin IDs to kind of throw them off. You combine all the plugin ID, you know, so you combine the plugin IDs and the asset, you know, making it look more cleaner and nicer. So when you're working on one plugin, they know everything listed will be just the affected asset under each plugin. So this will look more neat and clean, and it will help the system admins and the engineers to work through it and then give you like a quick response as to what plugins they cannot fix currently, or what capabilities they have, or what capabilities they do not currently have, and then that will take some time. So this is going to be where you will need to create a POM, as plan of action and milestone, to track whenever they will be able to get to that vulnerability to remediate it. All right, so the next video we're going to do is going to be based on how you manage POM, that is a plan of action and milestone, the POM management. That's going to be our next video. But before I end, I know people will be wondering, what is this worksheet about? So this is something that, you know, you can create an extra spreadsheet on your analysis tab, where you can, you know, use it to do some, you know, duplicate removal and stuff like that. Because sometimes you can click on the CVEs, you know, just like we did, we can see that you have multiple CVEs that are like the same, or they are repeating based on the different ports and stuff like that. So you want to be able to remove duplicate. So for instance, what you're going to do is that, you know, once you highlight this and then you go to data, you're going to go to remove duplicate, right? So once you click on remove duplicate, you specify what column you want to work with. I want to work with this column, and then you click on OK. So you see 2 duplicates was found, so that has been removed. So therefore, you know that, okay, this is how you remove duplicates. And also, if you have a column that has multiple IPs and then that are kind of repeated, you know, you want to be able, because sometimes, you know, you could have like 50, 30 IPs, and then you don't want to go start looking through it and see which one of the IPs are repeating. You just copy everything, we'll go into your worksheet and then kind of remove duplicate IP, so you can have like unique IP for each plugin that you're looking at. So for instance, here we have 10 count, so let's remove duplicate and see how many count will be left. So we see 4, so we're gonna have what, 6 count left. So this is how you remove duplicate whenever you're dealing with this kind of analysis, and then, you know, you want to remove duplicate from each tab, be it ports, IP address, or CVEs, or what have you. All right, make sure you save, just so you can save this analyzed copy for your records, and then you send the system admins the copy. All right, so when you go back to the folder, the folder structure, you notice that under January we're gonna have let me just do this. you're gonna have this same scan reported here, right? So this is gonna be the analyzed version of it, and then you can also have your raw copy of the scan, should in case you have a need to go back to the raw scan. All right, that's it for this video. If you find this video useful, do like, share, and subscribe. If you have not subscribed already, please do comment below and let me know your thoughts on this video, and I'll see you in the next video, which is going to be our prompt management video.